Welcome to Southern Soul Chats, where real conversations meet faith-filled truth. This season, we're stepping into a special series called Faithfully Funded, where we talk about money through the lens of faith, trust, and relational equity. Because every dollar carries a story, and how we handle money shapes not only our finances, but our relationships and our walk with God. I'm Dr. Miranda Ferguson, and this season I'm joined by Matt Miller, author of Two Sides of Every Dollar. Together, we'll explore money not just as something to manage, but as a mirror, revealing what we value, who we trust, and how we love. So wherever you're listening from, lean in as we learn to live and give faithfully funded, one step at a time. Hey guys, welcome back to Southern Soul Chats. I am your host, Dr. Miranda Ferguson. And you know what? Happy New Year. It's a new year and a new season. And our season this time around is called Faithfully Funded. And I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, we're talking about money, finance, and the heart behind it all. And I am super excited because I don't have a guest. I have more than a guest. I have a co-host for the whole season, and it is Matt Miller. Yay!
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for committing your time to doing this season. I am so excited.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a privilege to be here.
So briefly, without giving away all your good secrets, share who you are, a little bit about yourself.
I'm Matt Miller. I am from right here. In fact, I grew up here, and I've had the privilege of doing a lot of things in my life. I'll keep the personal side personal and the professional. I have a wonderful daughter. She's fantastic. I love her to death. I have been through some trials in life, happily married and unfortunately divorced. Successful career, changed careers at 38, and then joined an industry that I knew a lot about, but I wasn't a part of. And thankful for the first journey because it helped me build the second journey. And here we are. A business partner and I own this firm called Awaken Wealth Partners. And it's a privilege to work with people every day. And quite frankly, talk about things that we'll talk about over the next several weeks.
I know, I'm so excited. So we're just going to rip the Band-Aid off, right?
Because it's your show.
Yeah, we're gonna rip the Band-Aid off because let's face it, talking about money is difficult.
Sure.
It's not enjoyable to most people.
Well, if I may, because I get to do it every day, it is enjoyable to many, but for reasons that you may not know, which we'll unpack.
Yeah.
But I would agree with you. I've got the calls on Mondays and Tuesdays after Sunday sermons and said, what?
What are you thinking?
I get those calls too, sure. Yeah, for sure. And I think it goes back to why we're here and that lunch that we had.
It does. And, church is a very wonderful place until the sermon that the poor pastor gets when the main pastor is out of town. That's the week where everybody's like, oh my gosh.
Around Thanksgiving or Christmas and New Year's. Yes, absolutely. Which happen to be around budgeting times and things of that nature. Yeah.
Of course, because we got to time it just like that.
Sure.
So here's the thing. For me, and we're going to get into this journey and how it started in just a second, but this idea of kingdom currency, not just traditional cash in hand, coins in hand, which I just found out they're doing away with pennies. And I was like, what? So money is changing, right? And while money is...
No pun intended.
No pun intended. But while money is changing, the perception of money needs to change too.
Sure.
And what a great opportunity to think about that and to connect money to our hearts.
Yes, I think, and we talked about this extensively. I think money has, for whatever reason or another, it's now a taboo subject. I'll use an example. Growing up, I told my mom, by the way, I was going to say this, just so you know.
You've already warned her?
Oh, I already warned her, yeah. More stories on that later. But, my parents didn't talk about the birds and the bees with me. So, as a child that didn't have the internet, where do you learn about the birds and the bees? You, unfortunately,
on the bus.
Or fortunately, on the bus or at school or whatever, we'll leave the other details out. You learn about them. And money has become one of those subjects because it's difficult to talk about, and also because we fail at stewarding it well. We don't want to talk about it. Well, my problem with that is if we shy away from the topics that are difficult to talk about, who benefits from that? No one. And that's literally one of the chapters in my book is wealth, debt, and the beneficiaries of both. And there are various forms of wealth and there are various forms of debt. And each has beneficiaries, and the first beneficiary is ourselves.
Yeah. And I'll tell you why when you say, it's a taboo subject and we don't talk about it. Starting this and preparing this with you, I did all the things, right? I bought all these books that I wanted to see what everybody wanted to say about it. And I steered way clear away from it's not a negative. I didn't want the Dave Ramsey type books. I didn't want somebody to tell me how to manage my money or how I could have more money if I do it this way, even if it's biblical. I wanted more concept of money. I wanted more, how has money changed people's lives in a different way than what's projected on social media and the news. And upon doing all that digging and clearly digging in the Bible as well, I found just this astonishing fact, which was, very eye-opening for me, because I think in all my years of church, I've never heard anybody really say this from the pulpit or in youth group or Sunday school or all the things, is that out of 39 parables, 11 to 16 of them talk directly about money. And then out of all the scriptures, over 2,000 talk about money, wealth, stewardship, possessions. I was blown away. And then I tell you that and you said, well, don't forget food. Food's pretty up there too. But it was crazy because what I was beginning to realize and put together was that if our Lord and Savior talked about money that much, it had to be pretty important.
Yes. It's also important to remember that in parables and other scriptures, it really wasn't about money per se.
Right.
It's a way to talk about something bigger than money.
Right.
And I think that's important to talk about. For example, the parable of the talents is often used in my industry as a way to talk about investing and compounding. And while I agree that that's a good example of compounding, Jesus wasn't talking about money.
Right.
And so, yes.
But he used the thing that he knew
would connect with us.
Would connect.
100%.
And what I believe is a huge idol. And so Jesus always killed a lot of birds with not even a whole stone, like a pebble.
No. He didn't even need that.
And so the whole thought for me about no one can serve two masters, which is in Matthew 6:24, really has come to light, which I think is a good place to say it's come to light because of how this series even started, how this even came to be. So we're going to talk for a minute about how Matt and I ended up sitting here for this series. So way back in 2025, first of the year, we were fundraising. Oh, look at that, money. We were fundraising, and I'd had the opportunity to meet with Matt, and we sat down, and I was telling Matt about what we do in our nonprofit, and we were just really talking. We were getting to know each other and have lunch, and I feel like I talked way more than poor Matt got to talk.
We were talking about your organization.
We were. It was all about me. You're right. All about. No, I'm kidding. It's all about the organization, and fundraising is very important in nonprofit world. And so as we talked, it just developed, and Matt shared a lot about who he was. And towards the end, he just kind of looks at me and says, if you ever want to have a single freestanding podcast on money, I'd love to do it. And I thought, oh, that's a great idea. I bet I could fit that in somewhere. And you shared you were going to have a book coming out and you were super excited about it. And then he ruined my life. And then he looks at me and says...
It was a question. I didn't try to ruin your life.
Yeah, he really... but this one question snowballed into all of this. And he looks at me and he's telling me about the book, and we're talking about, foundations, which we're going to get into next week. But he says to me, what is your first thought? What do you remember your first thought about money being? And I was paralyzed. I didn't know. He's staring at me, and I'm like, I got nothing. And I'm like, I don't know.
I think you covered it with, you took a big bite of food, and then you just kept chewing, and then you're like...
Yeah, It was chicken salad. It takes a while to chew.
And so 15 minutes later, as you finish that bite, we then finally got the
and
answer.
I still was like, I don't really know. And he was such a gentleman. He's like, it's okay. A lot of people don't know. It's like, well, thank the Lord that I am not in the group of all that knew or whatever.
And to be fair, I was leading the jury. I have some experience with the question myself because I've had to ask the same question to myself.
Yeah, and so that question, as we were wrapping up lunch, probably had just a little bit of time left together. The more he was talking. I'm sorry, I don't know anything you said after that point. The more he talked, the more my brain was going overtime trying to figure out what was my first thought of money. I know why I manage money the way I do, but I don't why. What's that first? Where was that launch, right? And so before we leave, I'm like, I got a great idea. Why don't we do a whole series? Like, think about it, pray about it. Like, what would it look like? Let's get back together. And he goes, okay. Okay. And so from that discussion, here we are. New set, new everything.
By the way, this is fantastic. Yeah,
it's all for you.
No. Again, kind of like our lunchtime. This is for your organization.
So, why does this series matter to you? Why is it important to you? And then I'm going to tell you why it's important to me.
If you go way upstream and you think about our earliest memories, a lot of what we do is from those memories. The way that we were parented, our upbringing, our experiences, our joys, our sadness, we bring all of that with us. And
we refer to that as baggage in the counseling world.
We can. But so the two sides of every dollar then.
Yeah.
Okay?
I'll see what you did there.
You're welcome. So I'm going to run with that. Okay?
Yeah.
So baggage, when I'm at the Carousel C, that's terminal, Carousel 2 at IAH, you'll see baggage that is, no need for names mentioned, but you'll see baggage that was purchased maybe on a discount rack.
Right.
And then you'll see baggage that was not purchased on a discount rack.
Absolutely.
Purchased at a premium.
Yeah.
So if we run with that parallel for just a second and say that one is a lesser experience, but one was a great experience, hopefully we had a mixture of both. So I'm okay with calling it baggage, but baggage implies negative. Instead, though, it's okay to talk about the negative, but I think it's important that we also look at the positives. But we often won't look back because we only think about the negatives.
Yeah.
We won't allow ourselves to open the brightness that is potentially there too because we're afraid of the negative.
Yeah.
So if you use that, now let's come downstream. That's the origin of that question. Because not everybody has a negative thought about that question. But the question is prudent. And so when you think about we all need money, it's very important to every single one of our lives. We're not here filming this without some funding.
True.
That someone made an income from and then gifted to your organization. Money is needed everywhere. But again, it's become this topic that's taboo. It's not spoken of in our homes. It's not spoken of in churches. It's not spoken of in organizations as much as it should be. But in all of those facets, it's required.
So maybe instead of baggage, we start calling it moderate luggage.
You could still call it baggage, but again, as I say, it's
no, I get it. Yeah, you're right.
Two sides of every dollar, which is the genesis of the book.
Right.
If we're going to talk about one side, let's talk about risk first. I don't want to get into all the chapters, but use risk, for example. Well, oftentimes if we look at risk, again, maybe from our upbringing, we're afraid of risk. But there are those that took a ton of risk while they were young because they were given the autonomy to do so.
That's good.
They had the freedom to do so. They were permitted to fail. They were in this unconditional loving home. And because of that, they look at risk differently than somebody else. And that's a big deal. So one's risk tolerance is going to be different than someone else's. Neither of them is wrong, but it's our responsibility to unpack that with whoever it is that we're working with and then follow that, because it's their money, it's their plan, it's their dream. But someone, literally the spouse, may be completely different.
Tell me about it.
and so if that isn't discussed somehow,
Right.
some way, then what happens? You're the one with the doctorate, not me. You know what happens.
I know what happens.
And so that's why I love what I do. I get to do that every day. That's a privilege, in my opinion, to be invited into someone's family, not necessarily family, but to be invited into their home.
It kind of is.
It is tier 2, tier 3.
Yeah.
I should never be a tier 1. That's the home,
Right.
right? It's not the brick that makes the home. So anyway.
But you're a resource.
I'm a resource.
Yeah.
And that's important, because all of these things, whether we look at whether we have them or not, we either need to use what we have or then delegate it to somebody else to help us get to where we want to be. And that's why I love what we get to do.
So for me, it started in one way, but it has developed over this season of studying to prepare for this moment into something else. So I've never been a bad money manager. Like, my mother was very well at taking a penny and making it buy all kind of things and stretch as a single mom. Mm-hmm. And had very good, solid money managing skills. But the majority of my life, I was an only child. And we were by no far, we were not purchasing that luxury luggage, right? And so there was this growing sense, I think, as being an only child with that selfish first child, only child mentality. A mom who worked a lot, I spent a lot of time with grandparents or in daycare, church daycare. That I can manage my money well, but I don't want to give it to anybody. Like, what's mine is mine. Don't me ask for it. I need it. I need every dime of it, from check to check and whatever. So even though I knew the principle of tithing and all the principles of like giving to others, it's always been something that I've struggled with. Like, this is the first time in my life over the last 8 years, it may be 10 years, let's say 10 years to be safe, that I've actually consistently tithed every single week. Because I would do that, I'll tithe, but then something would happen, and no. And I've never been superly generous, like ever. And I blame that on being an only child. I'm not going to blame it on anything else, right? I blame it on being an only child because I didn't have to share. I didn't have a lot of other children I grew up with, so everything I did was pretty much by myself. So what was mine, and I liked it that way. I still have some of that inside of me. But what happens when you're like that and you grow up and you get married and you go through divorce and you go through all different facets of life, you have children, you realize that money can be a really big issue, especially if you are not a giver personality. Like Jeremy and I say it all the time, I'm the saver, he's the spender. We'll leave it there. There is always a constant battle with money. We can have a great marriage and a great life, but you let one of us be like, no, we can't do that because of money. The other one of us, we won't say which one, is not happy.
I think you're implying which one, by the way.
Let them read between the lines, okay?
Yeah.
So that was what was interesting about the question was, I wanted to know. I wanted to know what was my first thought of money, where and how can I begin to correct this? Because in the last 3 years of ministry, the last 8 years of being in Houston, but specifically the last 3 years of being in ministry, God has done some amazing things in my life, and he's done it with money. He's also asked me to give up things in my life that had to do with money. And so there's been this working atmosphere in my life. And as I started this study, like I said, it started off in one way, but then as I started this study and started really reading about what the Bible says about money And like you were talking about the talents, how he uses certain things. It might not be the main objective, but he uses it. If we read in context and go back some chapters and go forward some chapters, it turned in to the prayer of, you know what, Lord, in my life, there are a lot of generous people. And I've become more generous. Like I look at my house as an asset, not a money asset, but an asset to invite people in, to have dinners, to be in relationship. I look at my children the same way, that these are all gifts and blessings that God's given me. But I still struggle with that tinge of if somebody needs something, or even, you know, when the nonprofit needs something, oh no, do we have the money for it? That cringe, right? But I see so many people around me who are so generous, and they don't even bat an eye. They don't, and you know, automatically you think, well, they must have it. But what I'm realizing is that's not exactly always the case. It's that their heart has a different posture than my heart. And so for me, this is super important, and it's spilled out even into my marriage, is that as I've been studying, my husband's been asking me, what are you learning? What are you finding out? And it's brought us to be able to start having a discussion that we've avoided for 13 years about money, and to start digging into where are those foundations for us. And so now it's, for me, a journey of learning how to be more of a cheerful giver, how to be more generous, not to live in this worldly mindset of money, but to understand this upside kingdom idea, which we'll get more into. And so and then God's taken it and done all this that you see today. And I'm just like blown away.
I want to go back to something you said, because I'm going to use a nervousness. Okay. If you look at no matter the athlete, you pick one. There's nothing wrong with being nervous, for example, for a big game or a big event that tells you something about yourself. There are many examples of athletes, for example, we'll use the baseball analogy, who their strikeouts were in large number, but their home runs were too. So where I'm going with that is that I call that healthy tension. So when you think about the tightness, I wouldn't necessarily, again, think of the luggage analogy or the two sides of every dollar. That isn't necessarily a negative thing. I would prefer to think of, what if that's a protection thing, and not protecting yourself necessarily, but am I stewarding this well? Because if you run with that, if someone, take the opposite side of that, someone who doesn't think about anything in that regard, and they just frivolously do it without any due diligence. Well, we're also told that that's not the case.
Right.
So somewhere in that mix, somewhere with those two bookends, is a healthy place to be. Not all for me, also not just give it away without even thinking.
Roll the window down, throw it out.
Exactly. So it's like emotional intelligence. I'm a big fan of emotional intelligence. So if you look at any of those emotions, anger is often thought of as bad. Well, if we are angered and then react poorly, sure. But if I'm angered because I see some injustice in the world, then that's not bad.
Right.
That's
it's
raising
productive.
awareness. That's correct.
Right.
Happiness, the same thing. I can be happy, but then I could act carelessly, frivolously, or whatever you may to say, with that happiness, and then that's also not good. So anyway, I just wanted to come back to that, because if someone feels that way, that's not necessarily a bad thing, as I see it. Paying attention to money is important. We're told to be good stewards of it. We're also told to be good stewards of our gifts, of our mind. I think of Joseph. This podcast isn't about necessarily the beginning of his journey.
Right.
Your listeners can go read that. But think about it for a second. The responsibilities that Joseph was given were immense. Okay?
Yeah.
This young man was 30 years old. The reason I can say young man is because that's 22 years younger than me. So at 30 years old, he was the second in charge for the entire nation of Egypt. Okay? Now go upstream. he got there because not him bragging about his knowledge. He was told, Pharaoh was told that there's someone that can interpret this dream. And so Joseph was brought out of jail. He had to shave and shower and all that stuff.
Had to get all gussied up.
He wasn't ready.
Yeah.
He wasn't ready. And so he's then before Pharaoh, and I'll just paraphrase here, but hey, I was told you could translate this dream. He didn't say, yeah, I could translate your dream. He said, my God can translate your dream for you. And I think that's really important to remember, because so now let's fast forward. 7 years of prosperity, 7 years of famine, and then, okay, you sound like an intelligent individual, get it done. Again, paraphrasing.
Yeah.
Okay. And so he was given a necklace, a signet ring, fine linens, a wife, control, power, you name it.
All the things.
All of it.
All of it.
All of it. And here's the thing that I've never heard of this spoken of. It's always about how well Joseph did. Sometimes it's about planning. You got to plan a little bit. I would argue that it's not a little bit to run in a nation for 14 years. It's a lot more than a little bit. But I've never heard it spoken of about after that. And that's what was revealed to me this morning. Think about that. He was given a gold necklace, a ring, linens, wife, power. It's also said, I forget the scripture, forgive me, but Pharaoh said, no one will raise a hand or a foot without your saying so.
The whole kingdom.
Exactly.
He was handed the kingdom.
Exactly. Now, push pause for just a second. At 30 years old, this Matt Miller would have done a poor job with that. Okay? I was 30 once. I had some responsibilities. I flew around this great country of ours and had direct reports. I was also 30 years old.
Yeah. A kid.
And I didn't make a lot of great decisions.
Yeah, me either.
Now, I made some because I was promoted and things of that nature. Yet, if you think about that, I like to think that's that lure that we should watch and pay attention to, because if we're not careful, it's not the money that's evil. That's not what's said.
Yep.
It's not that he was successful. That's not what was said. In fact, you could look at several people. David was successful. Was he not?
Oh, absolutely.
Abraham, Solomon, many people were successful. So that's not it. But it's the love of it.
Yeah.
Because it can lure us away from the things that matter most to us.
It's funny, a word, we'll say an article, right? Meaning in the English sense, if you're in school, you learn the articles are a, and, the, but, your, or whatever, nor. One change of an article changes that whole scripture of money is the root. Or people, usually I hear it, money is the root of all evil. So there's the being an article. But actually, it's a root of all evil. One root, not the root. It's a root. And that's really important, because I think that people miss that when they read it. They just hear it, and then you hear it in society, and you just run with it because it's biblical. It sounds biblical. It's in there. There's the scripture attached to it, but it's a root. One.
Well, the love
of others. The love.
The love of it.
Right, the love. Not the money itself. The love is a root of it. Okay, so you've touched on your 30-year-old self, Matt. So give us, who Matt is. Start and just tell us about you. Because we're hearing these great things, and you have a wealth of knowledge. But like you said, at 30, you probably didn't have all of this wealth of knowledge.
So, born and raised in Texas, went to school, literally. I passed my high school on the way here today. Currently live down the street in a small town called Tomball, Texas. Graduate of Texas A&M. And I've lived in Atlanta, Chicago, Kansas City, Denver, Dallas, and Houston, all with my first career. I changed careers at 38. either because, this is a joke, either because I set my goals too low or for whatever reason I was successful. But needless to say that at that time, I was on an airplane about every other week and away from my family. And it was costing me more than, at the time, I was chasing things that, I was chasing income, miles, role, status, all of that. The things that I was lured by.
Yeah.
Success, things of that nature. And I was. We were doing well. And unfortunately, so well that it came at a cost. And we sat down and we decided a change was needed. And I had two paths that I was going to go, and this is the one that I chose because I've always liked this conversation, these things. It's always been very intriguing to me, which is why I like business. I like the numbers. Organizations that are successful, it's because the numbers are successful, and it's because the organizations understand the importance of the people that run the organization, and they make a great product or provide a great service, et cetera, et cetera. I enjoy all that. And then started in a new career at the age of 38, and here we are. My business partner and I own a firm, and we get the privilege of being invited into people's families and lives and helping them.
When you started this firm, when you and your partner started this firm, did you really fully grasp the journey that you were about to be on?
Not the journey I was about to be on, because that changed shortly after. But I can say this. I can say that all of that I had been given the opportunity to leverage beforehand, yes, I can absolutely look back and say this and this and this and this equates to that, because I needed all that experience. I needed all that business acumen. I needed people to look me in the eye and go, young man, it's not how it works. I needed all that. I needed to be told what I needed to hear rather than what I wanted to hear. I needed all this information. And it was a while, and I'm super thankful for all that, because then that led to I needed to make a change. And then when I made a change, I quickly made another change shortly thereafter, because I realized that where I landed, I'm glad I made the transition, but that's not where I actually wanted to be. And then through a divine experience, I met John, and I can't emphasize enough. This whole thing has been a wonderful journey that I couldn't have done.
Which is what makes it the best journey, because if you couldn't have done it, then it means you have to point to who did.
Yeah.
Like in every time you share or tell what you do, or an opportunity like this, it means you always are almost forced to have to point back to, well, if you didn't do it, who did? Was it John? No.
Well, the only reason we're here is because, I won't mention the name, but somebody we both know said, hey, just in case you're wondering, so-and-so is looking for you.
Me.
Looking for some help in sponsoring an organization. And I said, well, I know them, church. As you know, we used to go to church together.
Yeah.
And so I know them. And so I looked into it, and then we went to lunch. And now we're here.
Yeah.
So
and look at how it all ended up.
Yeah, look at this. This is fantastic.
And this is also all God.
Butch and everybody's fantastic.
I know, and it's what you said. As I even walked in the room today and saw all of this for the first time, there was that immediate thought of, how did this happen, Lord? I didn't do any of this. Like, this is none of me. It is all of you. Mm-hmm. All from being able to pay for it, which is important in the world. You have to pay for things to do things like this. You have to pay for them, like how to pay for it, the way the relationship came with Butch, who helps us on all of the things we do and makes us look great, to even the timing with you, because I think I told you this at lunch. Someone had told me when I started this nonprofit 3 years ago that you would be a good resource, but I had a hard time like tracking you down, and life was lifing, and so it just didn't happen. But looking back, I realized if I would have met with you for lunch 3 years ago, I had not been through enough experience to really be able to be like, here's what we're doing, here's who we are. And so what I thought, well, bummer, that's one less person that can help us get this off the ground, was more like, no, great. when it's time for him to be in your path and you're ready, I've already got this planned. Like, you guys have a divine appointment. It's just not today.
Sure.
And so even that makes this even better for me, because I have seen the full picture from where it started to today.
And, can I add something to that, please?
Yeah, go.
I think it's important to be okay with being proud of that. Here's what I mean. Let's go back to the parable of the talents. When 2 of the gentlemen doubled what they had, it didn't just end there. It was, good job, let's celebrate. I'm paraphrasing.
Right.
So it's okay to celebrate the successes that you've experienced. And I want to say that to everybody if I can. It's okay to be successful. It's okay to do a good job. That's actually what you want. And for whatever reason, and I'm not here to solve for that, it's almost as if now as a Christian, it's not okay to make money. It's not okay to be the leader of an organization. It's not okay to be uber successful. That's not written. We just talked about Joseph. You want to talk about Solomon?
Yeah.
Pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Okay. Abraham, pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And I realize that's the Old Testament. I get it, but still, I mean, these individuals were great stories of faith and what they were able to do with that. And I think, again, your story is your story. We're here. My story is mine. But be proud of that. I think it's okay to be proud of that while remembering where that came from.
Right. And we'll dig more into that. But I want to say this, because you brought up a good point. I often hear when people talk about money, tithing, we just flop it into a big bucket. They say, well, the Old Testament, that's the Old Testament. Well, here's the reality of it. Yes, it's the Old Testament. It is something that we look back and reflect upon. It's examples. It shows God's hand. It shows his heart. It shows his sovereignty. But if you really want to get into the Old Testament and New Testament discussion, people have got to realize that if you read your Bible, if you practice any of the skills we did last season in digging deeper, you will find that the New Testament takes the Old Testament and ups the ante. It ups the ante. It doesn't negate the Old Testament. It doesn't say, that doesn't matter anymore. Through the Beatitudes, through the Sermon on the Mount, all the things, right? You put them together. It ups the ante. It says that's good, but besides that, you should be doing this in more detail. And that's really important. When we get into a topic like money, it is great to order 13 books like I did. It's great to read your book. But we have got to go back to the main book. We've got to take those resources and then get our Bible out and put them together and go, Holy Spirit, what do you want me to do? How are you working in me? Because see, my conviction on money is probably going to be very different than yours, because God's doing something with me in particular on my journey in my lane, picking up my cross and going on my path. And so that has been huge for me during all of the study time, is the revelation that God's given for me. And like, my hope for all this is that we are challenged to go back to our Bibles. Some of the concepts we're going to talk about over the next few weeks, really have some honest conversations with ourselves. And then let's see what the Holy Spirit does. Let's see how he changes our heart. Let's see if we have new revelation. Like, I know it can happen because it's been happening in me for weeks.
Yeah, and the beauty of that, I think, is you could use that topic. As you know, I don't like to refer to money as a relationship. We'll get into that later.
Yep.
But if you take, this is why Jesus talked about food and money, because he was using that to connect, but also now take money and relate that to forgiveness. There's a skill set in learning how to forgive. There's a skill set in learning how to steward money. There's a skill set in learning grace and mercy and things of this nature. All of these are important to us. That's why I like talking about money. That's the importance of the book, The Two Sides of Every Dollar. There's a lot of things about money that it can teach us about ourselves. And anyway, that's why I like the book.
Well, this
I'm
is
biased,
a
of course,
great
'cause
This is
I
a
wrote
great
it,
time
but-
to tell how much you like the book, because when you were just explaining the book to me over lunch, I didn't know anything that was really written in it. I'm just listening to you loving it and the passion. You can just, when you talk to you about what you do in this book, you can see you're very passionate. It's just like bubbling out of you. And so the things you were saying, I was just like, I'm intrigued. I don't ever want to read a book about money. No, thank you. But I want to hear more, Matt. That's what was going on with me. And so this is a great time to talk about your book. And one of the things in your book, which is called The 5 U's, which again goes back to lunch and how this started. So tell us what motivated you to write this book.
I don't think the world needs another book about budgeting.
Sure don't.
I don't think the world needs necessarily another book about investing. I think there are some fundamentals that are key that we could probably go back to. There are definitely some proof of concepts that should be kept. But in regards to money itself, it's so important to all of us. I'll go to the 5 uses. And this is how we talked about it. I think we talked about this at the office too.
We did. We talked about it twice. And y'all, I'm going to tell you, this is so good. Get a piece of paper, hold your fingers up. This is great. I love this.
Yeah, and basically what this means is the 5 uses of money. Every dime you make, one of these is how it's used. So in sequence, generosity, saving, spending, and I can never hold this finger up long, debt, and then taxes. So generosity, saving, spending, debt, taxes. Those are the 5 uses of money, the 5 U's. And our joke was that I believe that the sequence matters. So
right.
I like using the thumb as generosity because if we still have all 5 of our fingers or all 5 of our toes, we know the importance of the thumb and the big toe.
And the balance.
And the balance. I joke, and I know this is a Christian podcast, so I'll mind my P's and Q's. But while I'm educating our younger generation, I remind everybody that the largest finger, it will come back and bite you.
Yeah.
if you don't watch it.
Right.
Which again, that's the lure, because we don't all to a certain extent enjoy money.
Well, it can be really stressful.
No, I understand that. I'm going to play golf this afternoon.
Shocker.
For those who know me, yes. I enjoy going to play golf. It's a release for me. It's mentally and emotionally and in some way spiritually when I'm upset. Whatever it may be, it's healthy for me. But what's required to go play golf?
Money.
It's
expensive.
It can be nowadays, especially, yes. But I go back to, it's very important that you watch that middle finger, because that's what I think a lot of pastors could get better at, or a lot of sermon messages could get better at, is we'll talk about this one a whole lot, okay? But we really don't talk about these others.
Yeah.
Well, the hand is going to be really hard to operate with just the thumb. And in order to relate to a congregation, I think you should meet them where they are, or at least meet people halfway and relate to people. Because if it's only about the message that you have, then I think it's really hard to connect with people. And that's again, why we don't talk about money as much as we should. I don't know, but I think that's part of it. If you don't relate with somebody, it's really hard to connect with them.
Right.
Okay. Well, if it's all about their message and they don't feel like they're listening to your message, well, thanks for the time.
Right.
And if we're really about the, how did it go like this, when we were little, when I grew up here?
Yeah.
And you go like this. And
the church and open it.
And if it's really about all these
the people. Yeah.
Then it's very important to relate.
Yeah, I know we'll get into this more on our next episode, but I really feel like the downfall, and I won't just blame it on church, let's just say overall, is that we're not educated properly.
No, it goes back to I'm not trying to be downtrodden on the church either.
Yeah.
I'm just,
it's a fact.
It's an example. But earlier, I actually spoke of it. I said, my parents, do you know how many people I meet that say, I wish my parents would have?
Yeah, I try we have a bunch of kids, right? And I'm already trying to be like, please don't say that about us. But you're going to. You You just
It's
can't
hard
help
to
it.
cover everything.
Yeah.
But if you look at some of the basics, I think it would be important for every household to think about it, to talk about it. For example, again, not going to dive into the book too much here, but what are the things that you value most? What are the two things that you value most? Let's go through this. What are the two things you value most?
My family and my closest friends.
Okay. So Jeremy's not here, so we won't ask him. But here's what's a great exercise to go through. When you go home tonight, ask Jeremy what he values most. Don't presume that your answer is correct. Open-minded, in neutral, what are the two things he values most? And what his answers are matter to him. So if you take the two, okay, your two and his two, in theory, you potentially have four things that the leads of this household value most.
Right.
Or three, because there's an overlap of one,
Mm-hmm.
or two, because there's an overlap of both. Fair?
Yeah, fair.
So if you take those 4 to 2 things that you value most, at a minimum, wouldn't it be important to impart that then to our children?
Yes.
Because if it's what you value most, then in theory, they're going to get something.
Right.
By the way, I was raised by a single mother as well.
Yeah.
Right down the road here. And some of my fondest memories, I remember my mother, we lived in a small apartment, and it had a pool in the middle of it, and it was rectangular in shape. And, I had my big wheel. I saw Star Wars on a rainy day. I remember getting sick because I ate too much spaghetti. And those aren't memories of money.
Right.
But she somehow made it happen.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, that is a fond memory of money for me.
Right.
The two things that you value most, both of you, and if that's important to both of you, then in theory, that should be imparted to your children. And at a minimum, it's, hey, this is what is important to your father and I, or your mother and I,
Right.
who is ever delivering the message, hopefully both. And then that way they know. Because I will say this, hopefully you don't feel like I'm blindsiding you, but I might have thought that one of the two things that you value most is your faith.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't.
No,
I didn't put it out there.
That's
You got me, Matt. You got me.
That's
Yeah.
Revise it. But I'm just saying, just have the conversations, because then if these are the things that we value most, let's just say there are 3.
Yeah.
Okay. So if these are the things that we value most, then how are these feeding up through those?
Right.
How are these 5 uses of money fueling those?
Right.
Because it's going to be required.
Yeah.
If you value family, you want to provide for your family. You want to provide a safe home for your family. You want fill in the blanks, all those things. Okay. Well, if you're spending everything you've got, well, then it's going to be hard to protect your family or provide for your family.
Right.
Okay. Hence the debt problem. We all got our taxes to pay. It is what it is. We're going to pay our taxes. Okay. But
Give Caesar what Caesar's.
also biblical.
Yeah.
100%.
Very.
Yeah. When you think about those things, again, it's important to give some direction, because without direction, it's just aiming at what? I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, then good luck, because I don't know where you're going to go. So again, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, and there's a good example of it.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Like when I was 30, if you'd asked me that question, 20 to 30, no, just say 30 down, maybe even 35 down. It's me like down. No, I'm saying if you'd asked me like 38, 35, 30s, 20s,
Okay.
if you'd asked me that question, I would have right off the bat had money would have been number 1, most important thing.
Okay.
Okay. And number 2 would have been probably my kids' family. We could lump it in there. And so I'm just proud of myself that I've grown past money being in the top 2. And for me, faith is always understood. So when I approach things, faith is like the understood most important thing in my life. I literally now for the past 3 years eat, sleep, breathe, all things faith, right? All the different ways that faith is lived out, all the things that God has called me to. And so for me, faith is just a given. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
I don't,
Valid.
it's not that I don't place it on a top 2. It's just that it fuels everything of who I am and what I do. And so then everything falls under that for me. The top two falls under that for me personally. And let me tell you, okay, I'm going to share a proud moment. Here's a proud moment. So last year, towards the end of the year, since I've been studying all of this, I think since I started in August or September of 2025. And I have an older son who's 26, and then under him is a 14-year-old. And I will say that the 26-year-old definitely had a different version of me. He was raised by a different version. I'm not saying it's a lesser than or a worse version, but it was a complete train wreck, different, not this version, right? And so he's, you can see when you raise children in a different version, especially if you have younger children like we do, you can see the different versions of you. And you can, if you're honest with yourself, you can pinpoint things. So I have a very older child who I love. He is great. He's a wonderful kid. But I can see where money was the most important thing to me because it made it the most important thing to him. And that has been very difficult in this season. And I noticed that some years back as he got older, and I started thinking, I really want to make sure I do a better job. I wasn't really thinking in this way of you layering it out. I really want to do a better job. And so I made small adjustments, small changes. But then the last 3 years, our kids really saw a shift in our household because when you work in ministry, you see a lot of things. Good, bad, hard. And so we really started teaching more about loving people and valuing the things we have. Still not great at it though, right? Still not 100%. Still not today. But right before all this began, my 6-year-old went to school for book fair. And I had told all the kids, I'm not giving you $5,000 for book fair this year because we have so many books and you don't even read them. Like, I'll say, let's read this one. No, but you want to come home with 12 more. Like, I just don't think that's a good idea. So I'm not doing it. And so they were like, well, we have money. And I thought to self, would you rather your kids go buy crap that's going to get thrown away or buy a book because they were interested and now they're invested in that book because they bought the book? So I said, you know what? It's your money. If you want to go buy books, who am I to tell you no? So they go do buy books, simple enough. We're at dinner, and they're so excited to tell us about the books. And one of them has change in a little bag, and he's like, look at me, change in a little baggie. And then out of nowhere, somebody abruptly says, yeah, Bo, my 6-year-old, he gave his $5 away. And I quickly was like, wait, what? You did what? And he says, yeah, and the change too, Mom. And I said, well, what did you do with it? He said, well, so-and-so, his mom didn't give him any money. And he really wanted to get something at book fair, and I had money. So I just gave it to him. And his littlest brother, Roman, said, yeah, he gave it to that kid that hit me on the bus the other day. That wasn't a really good idea. But in that very moment, all of this studying and wanting my kids to value something more than money, especially lessons learned looking back, I looked at him and I said, I'm so proud of you for giving what was yours to someone else and that you weren't selfish and that you cared about his needs. Because in that moment, that little boy, that was a need to him. It may be a wanted, but he needed the money to fulfill the want. And I realized that part of me that I was talking about, that stingy part, it would have said before, maybe even early last year, why did you give him your money? You could have bought something else with it. But I've realized that I want my kids to see that money is great and it can do really good things. But money is a tool to be able to get the finished product in which God is asking us to use our money for. And so I was really proud of myself in the moment because I probably would have went in a different direction. And I just saw the opportunity in front of all of my children to be like, you didn't have to have that $5. What were you going to do? Buy some crap with it? Buy candy? Go to Walmart and blow it? But instead, you showed something in your heart that was different. And I just wanted them to see it. And so you're right. It's really important to know what our tops are. Because our kids know faith is a non-negotiable in our house and all the things that come with it. They know that that we love our friends and that we do things, we open our home for people, and they know that we love each other even when we're not always great to each other, that we're a family and we're a team, and it makes our life revolves around teamwork, makes the dream work.
Yeah,
because
great saying. Yeah.
we have 6 people in our home, and only 2 of them are over the age of 40. The rest of them are little. And so it's very important. And I've spent I've wasted a lot of time looking at the wrong things as being important. Looking as money as not a tool, but as like the whole shebang.
I know it may feel like time was maybe wasted, but that's how we learn.
Yeah.
And that it is, I think we said this as we were getting started or before we started, is if we nailed it or got a home run right from the gate every time, we would eventually start complaining about that somehow.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we, if you think about how our mind works and how fortunate we are to have this supercomputer on top of our shoulders, there's that part that we learn, and then all of a sudden that becomes second nature. But then there's also that frontal lobe that continues to want to learn and to expand upon what you already know. You didn't know 2 + 2 from the jump, but now you don't even think what 2 + 2 is. It's just automatic. And soon it becomes second nature. You'll go back to what you were talking about earlier, that person who gives. Well, think about it. Okay? Here they are. Well, on top of this is the income that comes in. The income comes into the household. Well, then these 5 line items, if you want to think of it from a P&L perspective, they're used, right? They're utilized. Generosity goes out first fruits, and then saving. That is the sequence that everyone should follow.
Right.
Okay? Then spending and debt and taxes, et cetera. And there's a whole debt conversation. You spoke of Mr. Ramsey earlier. I think he's brought a lot of value to a lot of people who struggle with that. And I value that, but not everybody struggles with that.
Right.
And so, if we come back to that, and that person that you spoke of that may just give, okay? Well, think about the planning that is involved in that. 1, they made money. They have a history of giving. They save, okay, because they see future opportunities to then give.
Right.
And then they have some experiences that they learn from. They have this due diligence process that they go through in their mind, whether they look up the 501c3 and then they check what they can, or they don't. They have this process that they go through. It wasn't second nature from the jump.
Right.
They learn that.
It's a journey.
It is a journey. And I think that goes back to why I love this. None of us got it right out of the gate. And we all could use some encouragement, and we could all use some people who advocate for us.
Yep.
Because Lord knows there's a whole lot of people who think their spiritual gift is criticism, and I don't do.
I didn't find that one on the list. I have a bracelet. I haven't found that one yet on the bracelet.
Not found that one yet.
Okay, so let's wrap up with a takeaway. How about you remind us of the 5 U's again, because that's going to be really important going forward.
Sure. And I'm gonna start with the last one. If you recall, several weeks ago, I said, "Hey, I thought of a new example of the 5 U's," and it was the A-OK, right? Yep. Okay, so generosity, saving, spending, debt, taxes. Those are the 5 U's. And just as a reminder, every dime we make somehow, some way is going to one of those 5 uses.
Yep, and we are going to dig into that through this season. So, Matt, thank you, number one, for just being transparent and like sharing your journey of how you got here, because I think that's super relatable. We'd all like to believe that we just jumped out and did it right, but I would like to have someone email me if that is you and you did that. To meet you personally, have you sit on the couch and discuss that with us. I love your perspective. That is what drew me into this whole thought and concept, as it's just God's just like we spoke it and then God breathed on it and here it is. And so what I want to do is challenge you as the listener. I do know it can be tough. Matt knows it can be tough to hear money and what should I do with it, and are you asking me to spend it? We're not asking you to do any of that, what we're asking you is to have an open mind. If you joined us last season, we asked you to dig deeper into God's word. So the challenge for this season is to come with an open mind, an open heart, an open perspective to maybe hear some things you've never heard before, maybe to let the Holy Spirit nudge you in ways that may be a little uncomfortable. As Matt said, sometimes being uncomfortable is actually the first step to growth. And so we're here to just help you to walk through that and see it differently. So we want you to come back. We want you to catch the next episode. I'm super excited because the next episode digs deeper into where does our foundation of money come from? So it comes from that life-changing question. We're going to go back there. And I'm super excited. So, Matt, thanks again.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you guys for being here. We can't wait to see you next week. Bye, y'all.
Bye.